We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Chesam and Beis in Meseches Gitin. This is Gittin Daf 38b. On the previous Amud, Abaye said that even in a situation where a maidservant is committing acts of Isser, or rather there are men that are committing acts of Isser with her, even in that situation there would be a prohibition to free her because there's a general positive commandment not to free a slave. And the Gemara asks, is that really true? But we had an incident where there was a woman who was a half shifcha and half baschorin. The kavus rabba vasa baschorin, and they forced the master to set her free. The Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak, and Nachman bar Yitzchak said it was the exact same situation. Minug hefker nohagubah, the men were treating her like hefker. There were isurim going on that involved her, and that's why they set her free. Rashi says, v'chafu es rabim neshalo haisa ru'uya lola eved v'lo leben chorin. She wasn't fit to be an eved, she wasn't fit to be a ben chorin, because as we said, this was a woman who was half eved, half bas chorin. The Amar of Nachman said, la mishum de'itzah mifkeda apirya v'ribya. The reason why they were setting her free is not because a woman is commanded to be fruitful and multiply, to have children. It wasn't in order to have children. But because she wasn't fit to be with any particular man, because she was half eved, half baschorin, so she wasn't fit for any man. So everybody treated her like hefker, and she was involved in many acts of znus, and that's why they freed her. And so the same thing should be true in our situation, in our case as well. Why is Abaye saying that it would be problematic to free this maidservant? And the Gemara says, Hachi Ashta, what kind of comparison is this between the two cases? Hasam over there, Lola Eved Chazia, Lola Ben Chorin Chazia. When she's a half Eved, half Bas Chorin, she's not fit to marry an Eved. She's not fit to marry a Ben Chorin. She's not fit for anyone. That's why there's this issue of Minug Hefker Naguba. But over here in our case, Efshar de Miyachid Lola Avde, Uminterla, it's possible to designate an Eved. It is possible to protect her from these acts of znus by designating for her to marry an Eved, marry another slave, and then she will be protected. So there's no reason to free her in this situation, and that's why Abaye considered it to be a violation of a positive commandment. And the Gemara continues, Gufa, returning to what we said above. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said that Shmuel said, Kol HaMeshachar Avdo over Basei, anybody who frees his slave, it's a transgression, it's a violation of a positive commandment. Shenemar, like the Pasuk says, Li Olam Behem Ta'avodu, you have to enslave them forever. And the Gemara says, Meisra, we have the following question. Maisa Rabbi Eliezer, there was an incident with Rabbi Eliezer. Shenichnas bebeis haKnesses v'lo motza asar. He entered the shul, and there weren't 10 people for a minyan. V'shichar avdo, and he freed his slave. V'shlimu lasar, and he completed the 10 people in order to make a minyan. So why wasn't this a violation of the positive commandment? And the Gemara says to that, mitzvah shani. This was a situation of a mitzvah. It was in order to have this minyan for tefillah, and therefore it was permissible. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Liolam Behem Ta'avoda. The pasuk says that they should be enslaved forever. Again, talking about the Eved Kanani. Rishus Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael says this is something that is permissible. It's permissible to enslave them forever. It's not an obligation. Rabbi Akiva Omer Chover. Rabbi Akiva says no, it's an obligation. It's actually a violation if you set them free. It's an obligation to enslave them forever. And the Gemara now says, V'dilma Rabbi Eliezer, Savar Lakamandam Rishus, but maybe Rabbi Eliezer in the story above, when Rabbi Eliezer freed the slave in order to complete a minyan, maybe he held like the Mandam or like Rabbi Yishmael that it's only that you have permission to enslave them forever, and there was no violation. That's why he allowed it. And the Gemara says, Lo Sal Gadaitach, don't think that is the case. Titania Behedya, because we learned explicitly in a Brisa, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Chover. Rabbi Eliezer says it's an obligation to enslave them forever, and that's why we had to answer, like we said before, that since it was for a mitzvah, it's different. In that situation, it is permissible. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba says, Bahani Tlos Mili, for the following 3 sins, Nachti Bali Batim Inichsehu, and the Bali Batim, they lose their property. And the 3 sins are the mafki avdayo lecherusa, they let their slaves go free, udesayra nechsayu b'Shabbos, and they measure out the boundaries of their properties on Shabbos, udekavis udasayu b'Shabbos b'idan be'midrasha, and they set up their meals on Shabbos during the time of the learning in the Beis Medrash to avoid the learning. The Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Chia bar Abba said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Shtei mishpachos hayu b'Yerushalayim, there were 2 families in Yerushalayim, achas kavas udasa b'Shabbos, so one set its meal on Shabbos, v'achas kavas udasa b'Erev Shabbos, the other one set up its meals, 8 large meals on Erev Shabbos, Ushtehen and Nekru, and both of those were considered sins, and therefore both of those families were uprooted. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav. Rabba says that Rav says, Hamakdash avdo yatzel lecheirus. If somebody makes his Eved hekdesh, that Eved actually goes free. My time, what's the reason? Gufei lo kaddish. The body of the Eved is certainly not going to be hektish. You're not going to bring the Eved as a carbon. Lidmei lo kamer, and he did not say that he meant that he's giving the monetary value of the Eved to the Beis HaMikdash. So what could he possibly mean? De lahave am kaddish kamer. What he must be saying is that this Eved should be part of the Am Kaddish, should be part of the holy nation, essentially should be set free. But Rav Yosef Amar Rav, and Rav Yosef says that Rav says, Hamafkir avdo yotze l'cheres. If somebody is mafkir his Eved, if somebody declares his Eved ownerless, that Eved goes free. And the Gemara says, Man damar makdish kol shekain mafkir. The one who says that if you make your Eved hektish, he goes free. Certainly if you're mafkir your Eved, he goes free. However, Man damar mafkir, the one who says that if you're mafkir the Eved, it goes free, avol makdish lo. But if he sanctifies his Eved, that would not be enough to set the Eved free, because dilma lidmei ka'amar. Because maybe when the person was makdish, what he really meant was, as we mentioned above, what he really meant was that he's going to give the monetary value of the Eved to the Beis HaMikdash. And Rashi explains, again, there were three sins that the Balabatim lose their property. Demafki avdayu lecherus, they set their slaves free. Va'avri ba'aseh, that's a violation of a positive commandment, as we said above. Misayri nechsayu, they inspect their property. Rashi says that means sadoseim mistaklin b'Shabbos. They inspect their fields on Shabbos. Leida mahin srichen, to see what their fields need. Be'idon be'midrash, and they eat during the time of the learning in the Beis Medrash. Kishachacham doresh drashas l'rab b'Shabbos, when the chacham makes his drasha to the public on Shabbos, v'heim yoshvim b'seuda, that's when they're eating. V'ayalem lahaktem ulachar, they should make the meal earlier or make it later. They should not miss the drasha. And then the Gemara said, be'erev Shabbos, these two families, one made their meal on Shabbos, the other one on Erev Shabbos. What's wrong with Erev Shabbos? Rashi has two explanations. B'leilei Shabbos, one is that it means Friday night. Ve'en kan kibud Shabbos, that's not a good honoring of Shabbos. T'kaimelon kibud yom, kodem l'kibud laila. Because really the kavod of the yom, that should come before the kavod of the laila, and they were honoring the night more than the day. Ve'heim hayu miskavnim b'shvil bittul beis hamedrash. And their intention really was, bittul beis hamedrash, to stop from their learning. Some explain Erev Shabbos differently, but Erev Shabbos mamish, they made their meal on Erev Shabbos on Friday. They were very wealthy and they would eat large meals every day of the week. But to make a large meal on Friday is already usher. Because then a person is going to enter Shabbos, he'll be full, he's not going to have any desire to eat. And Rashi continues, Gufei lo kaddish she'enu roi lo lemizbeach v'lo lebedek habayis. Obviously, if you make an Eved hektish, you're not going to bring him on the mizbeach. You're not going to use the Eved to fix up the Beis HaMikdash. And again, lidmei lo ka'amar, hoy lo lamar demei avdiyolai. If he was giving the monetary value to the Beis HaMikdash, he should have said demei. And so therefore the explanation was, de lahavi am kadosh. What he means to say is that this Eved is part of the holy nation. Yisrael Gomer, meaning he's a full Jew. Techsib behu ki am kadosh ata. It says about Klal Yisrael am kadosh. V'lo dami lamakdish behema tmeya. Now it's not similar to one who is makdish an animal that is tmeya. Da'asam kevan de lek l'memar bata ta'avi am kadosh kamer. There you don't have the possibility that this animal that's not kosher is going to be part of the Jewish people. That can't be what it means. Al karchach l'dmei kamer. So there it has to mean that you're giving the value. Even though you didn't say that, that's what you mean to say. But here by an Eved where it's possible, you're saying that he should be part of the holy nation. There we would not say that it means that he's donating the value. And the Gemara continues, they had the following question, Tzarech get shichro or lo tzarech. In these cases of makdish and mafkir, when one sanctifies or declares ownerless the Eved and the Eved goes free, is a get shichro required or not? Does he have to give a document to set that Eved free, or is he completely free even without the document? The Gemara says, Tashma, come in here the following proof. The Yamar Rav Chia bar Avin Amar Rav, because Rav Chia bar Avin says the Rav says, Echad zev yechad ze yotze lecherus v'tzarech get shichur. In both cases of makdish and mafkir, the Eved goes free, but he does require a get shichur, he does require a document that sets him free. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba says, Umosvino nashmaitin. We have a question against this sugya, against this teaching. It says in the Braisa, Hamakdish nechasav, let's say somebody sanctifies his property, V'hayu behen avodim, and there are slaves among his property, Ein hagizborin rashayin lotzion lecheres, the treasurers of the temple are not able to set these avodim free, Avol mochenos on lacherim, but what they can do is they can sell the avodim to others, V'acherim motzianos on lecheres, and those others can set these avodim free. Rebbe says, Omer ani I say, Afu nos in atzmo, even the Eved himself can pay for himself, so to speak, v'yotze, and then go free, mivnei shu kamochelo, because it's like he's selling himself to himself. And in any case, what do we see from this brisa? We see that when the person was makdish the Eved did not go free. They have to go free subsequently by other people. They have to set themselves free by buying themselves, but they don't automatically go free. And to that, the Gemara says, Masnisa koramas alad Rav. Are you asking from a brisa on Rav? Rav tanahu polig. Rav is a tana, and he can argue with the brisa. And the Gemara continues to Ashma, coming here another proof. The Brisa says, Ach kol chayrim v'gomer me'adam. This is quoting a pasuk. That's why it's more of a question on Rav than the Brisa above. And the Brisa says, what is this pasuk talking about? Elu avodav v'shivchosav hakananim. This pasuk of Ach kol chayrim is referring to the Eved Kanani and the Shivcha Kananis. And the idea is that if a person sanctifies them, then the monetary value goes to Bedek HaBayis. So once again, you see that they don't go free. And to that the Gemara answers, Hachab Mayaskin, and here what are we talking about? To Amar Lidmei. The person said explicitly, I'm sanctifying the Eved, meaning I'm donating the monetary value of the Eved to the Beis HaMikdash. That is explicit in this case, and therefore it's not a proof to the case that we had above, where the person is simply makdish his Eved. But the Gemara says, Yachi, if so, idach nami, to Amar Lidmei. Why not answer the question above? That first brisa we brought against Rav, why not answer the same way and say we're talking about in a situation where the person said explicitly that he's donating the value of the Eved to the Beis HaMikdash? But the Gemara says that can't possibly be the explanation of the above brisa, because if that were the case, ein hagizborim rashoim lo'otzion lecheirus. It says in that brisa that the treasurers of the temple, they're not able to free these avodim. Gizborim ma'aviditayah. What do the treasurers of the temple have anything to do with freeing this Eved if you're just giving the value of the Eved to the Beis HaMikdash? V'su aval mochen osan lacherim. Furthermore, that brisa said that they can be sold to others. V'acherim otzion osan lecheirus, and these others can free them. Acherim ma'aviditayah. What are these others? How are they involved over here if the Eved was never given over to Hektish? V'su Rebbe Omer, and further it said in the Brisa that Rebbe says, Omer ani afu nosin demei atzmo v'yotzim v'nei shu kamocher lo. It says that he can pay for himself and go free in that fashion. V'ila demei, and if we're talking about a situation where his monetary value was donated to the Beis HaMikdash, ma'im v'nei shu kamocher lo. What do we mean that he's buying himself back? That the Beis HaMikdash is selling the Eved to himself? The Beis HaMikdash never had possession of the Eved at all. It was just a donation of the monetary value of the Eved. So therefore the point is, it's clear in that brisa that we're not talking about a situation where he said lidmei, and that's why we don't give that answer to the question. Rather we say that Rav is a Tana and he's able to argue. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here another proof. Hamakdish avdu, if somebody makes his Eved hektish, osa v'yochel, that Eved is able to work and he's able to consume the fruits of his labor. Shelo hikdish el adamav, because all that really happened is that he sanctified him for his value. Again, it seems to be from here that if a person is makdish the Eved doesn't go free, but what it really means is that he's sanctifying the value of the Eved, he's donating the value of the Eved. And Rashi explains the first brisa that we brought against Rav, Ein hagizborin rashoyin lahotzion l'cheirus, the treasurers of the Beis HaMikdash are not allowed to free the Eved. V'afil l'kavel miyad Eved pidyono, and the brisa in that line is saying that even to accept from the Eved the money for his own redemption, that's not possible. To kaimelon, because we've established Eved kones atzma b'kesef im nosnu lo al menas she'ein l'rab rishus, but in general, an Eved can acquire himself with money if the Eved had money for himself that the master had no possession over. Po debo es atzma miyad balav, if he has that money, he could redeem himself from his owners. However, that doesn't work here. V'hani gizborin ein rashoyin l'kach. These treasurers of the Beis HaMikdash, they can't do that. She'ein gufon konei lahektish, because the body of the Eved isn't owned by Hektish. Shelo hekdishan el lidmon, because the Hektish was only for their value. V'zu derech shichruhu v'lo derech mechira, and therefore this is a method of freeing. It's not a method of selling. Avol mochno san la'acherim, but what they could do is they could sell them to others. V'hadamim lahektish, and that money will go to Hektish. V'yosan acherim motzion osam l'cheirus yirtzu, and those others, they can set the avodim free if they want to. And then the Brisa said, Afu nosin demei atzma v'yotzei, he can even give his own value. Im yimsa adam shein nosin lo kesav amanah shein l'bay l'rishus bo, meaning if he had money for himself that his owner has no rishus over, he would be allowed to do that. Mimneishu kimochro hagizbar lo liatzmo, because it's as if the gizbar is selling him to himself. Kashem shu yachol limchor la'acherim. In other words, according to this opinion, this line in the Brisa, just like the gizbar can sell the Eved to others, he can sell the Eved to himself. But then it has to be done in the method as if it were a sale, v'lo derech pidyon, but it shouldn't be done as a redemption. But in any case, what's the point? Alma hamakdish Eved, kadosh l'damav. You see that somebody who's makdish the Eved, there is kedusha in terms of the Eved's value. The Eved is being sanctified in terms of his value. And again, the Gemara answer to that question, the Rav is a Tan, and he argues, Rav says that if a person is makdish the Eved goes free, but this Brisa says there is a Kedusha of the Eved in terms of the value of the Eved. And then the Gemara brought a question from a second Brisa, Ach kol cherev asher yochem la ish la Hashem, mikol asher lo me adam elu avoda v'shivchos v'aknanim. Again, it's talking about something that a man consecrates, including his avodim and his shivcha kananis, shemekdishon mekudashim lebedek habayis, that again, if you sanctify the Eved, you sanctify the shivcha, they are going to be considered hekdesh in terms of bedek habayis, their value. Their value will be given over to the Beis HaMikdash to repair the Beis HaMikdash. V'kevan diyol of time mikra kash l'Rav. In this brisa, we're learning it from a pasuk, so that's why that is difficult for Rav. You can't simply answer that Rav is a Tana and argues. And the Gemara answered to that, the Amar l'Dmei. In this case, he actually said that he's consecrating the Eved, meaning he's donating the value. Dom of Alai l'Hekdesh, meaning he was saying the value of this Eved goes to Hekdesh. V'lo hizkir olav shem kedusha. He didn't say about the Eved that the Eved is kadosh. There's no kedusha on the Eved. It's just the value. And the Gemara says, if that's the case, can't you say that for the first brisa? Amai ukmis to poligad Rav. Why say that the first brisa is arguing on Rav? Tirtzanami, Damar Lidmei. Say over there also that he explicitly said he's donating the value of the Eved to the Beis HaMikdash. And to that, the Gemara said that in the first brisa, Gizborin Mayavidatayu, if he was just donating the value of the Eved to the Beis HaMikdash, what are the treasures of the Beis HaMikdash? How are they involved? Ma Rishus Yesh Lem Eved, they have no Rishus over the Eved in that case. Halo Ein Lehen Ala Bailam Elamos, all they really have is they can demand money from the owner of the Eved. They have no control over the Eved. And Rashi continues, V'ikasha. Now, if you will ask, Lukma kagon da'amar harehu kadosh lidamav. Why not say that the first brisa is talking about where he phrases it, that the Eved is kadosh in terms of his value? The achshav hu kadosh limacher, because then you'll have a situation where he is sanctified. There is kedusha on the Eved somewhat, in order to sell the Eved and get the money for the Beis HaMikdash. U'reshuso olav limchor, and then there will be some authority that the Beis HaMikdash has over the Eved to sell the Eved. U'chemakdash karku v'hematamea. That's kind of similar to when somebody sanctifies land, or when they sanctify an animal that's not kosher. And to that the Gemara says, Taretz, you can answer as follows. Since by an Eved, the language of Kedusha is relevant, because it could mean that he's setting the person free, and he's allowing him to join the holy nation. So if the phrase would be, he is Kadosh L'damav, then all would agree that the Kedusha would be Chal on his body and go free. Like we say by Matvis Tamimim Lebedek Habayis. Let's say you have a situation where a person has an animal that is kosher to be on the mizbeach. It's kosher to be a korban, and then you try to instead donate it for bedek habayis, for the repair of the Beis HaMikdash. The halach is dein yotzin midei mizbeach. The halach is no, you can't take it away from the mizbeach. That animal goes to the mizbeach. But creases of its tmura, we have that in creases in tmura. And so therefore, if that were the case, so again the Eved would go free. Unless you say hilkach, therefore al karchach, you have to say masnisa pliga, that this brisa is arguing l'meimar, and this brisa means to say T'chi Omar Harehu Kadosh, that when you say Harehu Kadosh, Lo Lashon Am Kadosh Havi, it's not a language that he's joining the holy nation, Elo Lashon Hekdesh Li Machra B'damav, but rather it means it's a language that the Eved is Hekdesh to be sold for his value. So again, there is some rishus of Hekdesh over the Eved, but it is really for the value of the Eved, and that's why the brisa above, that first brisa, was discussing in what methods could the Eved go free in such a situation. And again, as Rashi explained, in such a situation, the only method that the Eved can go free is derech mechira and not derech shechror. And finally, the Gemara brought another brisa, and the brisa said that if you're makdish at Eved, oso ha'eved v'ochel v'ein ma'isa yad of hekdesh, meaning the Eved can work, and whatever the Eved earns is not going to be hekdesh. Shelo hekdesh ela damav v'lo emar ela harehu hekdesh lidamav v'havik ekarko behimatameh. Because what's really happening is he's making the Eved hekdesh for the Eved's value, similar to a case where somebody's makdish karka or makdish a behimatameh. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph.